Is this my third M4 or my fourth? Inexpensive, snappy, good looking. I've really enjoyed playing with the POCO lineup, and the hardware value you can find on the M series is kind of ridiculous. I'm sounding like a broken record, but it is kind of impossible to exaggerate how exciting it is to see the compute power sliding down into entry tier phones. Especially from a North American perspective, barely 2 years ago, we were talking about phones like the LG Stylo with a really low power MediaTek SoC, and now we've got stuff like this rocking solid mid-ranger performance. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a good looking phone, blending two of my favorite design accents on this rear panel. The camera module is full width to keep the phone from rocking on a table, that waka waka waka, but it tapers to the edges, kinda like the Pixel's new camera visor. This is it. I like this a lot. Flat edges, a flat screen, a textured backplate. It'd be nice to get a proper premium tier phone built a little more like this. The screen is a nice, colorful 1080p, bright enough in outdoor viewing. POCO rating it to 500 nits. That seems about right. And it supports the all-important 90 hertz. Before we get too excited or point to some other phone lacking a higher refresh rate display, in my early use, 90 hertz is fine, but moments really stand out when the phone might stutter, when it can't keep animating at 90 frames per second. And there aren't a ton of games that will play at 90 FPS regardless of the hardware. What makes me excited about phones like the M4 is stellar battery life, and setting the screen at 60 hertz isn't much of a compromise. All the other lifestyle hardware too. We've got a headphone jack, always convenient. Micro SD card expansion is a fantastic practical feature. You can easily add a ton of storage. Thanks to the mishmash of AV equipment around our home, an IR blaster ties it all together nicely. And I perpetually have to praise the power button fingerprint sensor. These are the fastest and most ergonomic biometric locks available. Kinda wish I had this on the 12S Ultra instead of the in-display sensor. The two drawbacks I'd point to at this price point: the haptics aren't bad, but they are on the fuzzier side. I've definitely been spoiled by more expensive phones that produce a more nuanced response, a tighter pulse when typing, and a more subwoofer-like response when playing ringtones and alerts. And the mono speaker really isn't bad, but you know, it's mono. Again, spending just a little more, probably gonna be a little nicer. The software conversation should be really familiar. MIUI, Android 12, the customizations we've seen before, making this UI really bouncy and playful. A few value-added apps pre-installed that you'll probably want to uninstall, and the same minorly concerning data warnings on apps like the calculator and the clock. There's no information in a calculator app that needs to be sent up to a company server. Why, POCO? Why? In speaking on performance though, I did want to highlight, usually by now there's been some kind of little patch update ready for launch. The performance on my review unit has been a little flaky for Wi-Fi, and multitasking has been a little twitchier than I would expect for this hardware. It's those kinds of performance issues we should expect to be polished up after launch, plus catching up to security and Google Play Store security patching. I expect that these will be cleaned up for the retail units. It's just a little surprising because they're usually cleaned up like now. Otherwise, we've got a nice little daily driver. There's a good amount of power on tap to get through communication, productivity, and a decent amount of casual gaming. Even our entry-level options now are better than just playing through a gem swapper solitaire game. I can't dig too deep into the 5G radio performance. It doesn't support the 5G in my neighborhood, but the Wi-Fi is respectable. It can't max out my broadband connection on a Wi-Fi 6 router, but it delivers solid speeds. I don't think this is a phone that many people will be trying to max out this communications hardware, and these speeds are plenty for media streaming, backing up to the cloud, social media, I'd say we're in good shape. The camera situation is kind of funny, but also kind of refreshing. We do have two lenses on the back of the phone. It's trying to look like it's another phone. There's only one consumer functional camera on the back. An okay little 13 megapixel shooter. It's functional for some point and shoot photos. It shoots 1080p video. Again, we're keeping our expectations in check, and this shouldn't be positioned as a powerhouse option in any category. If someone is leaning on their camera for more active social media, you'd want to pick up a nicer tier of phone. But it's strangely refreshing that there aren't other camera sensors. No mediocre macro sensor. It might have been nice to have an ultra wide or a telephoto, but at prices this low, we wouldn't have gotten good camera sensors. And a part of me just feels sometimes it's better not to waste the hardware. Am I totally off here? Would you rather have an ultra wide that you rarely or never use just to have it on the back of this phone to make you feel better about spending money on this phone? Lastly, bringing this plane in, the prime feature, the most important, it's so good, the battery. I can't praise these phones enough. Reviewers who snob out on premium tier phones always overlook the massive battery hit you take with a hot SoC and a fast screen. Set this phone to 60 Hertz, the screen performance will be more consistent, and you'll get an easy 2 days of light use, maybe more. This is the single biggest area where techies are not listening to their family and friends. If folks don't need more compute power, get the battery life and save money. With such a big battery though, the charging is slow. 18 watts on a 5000 milliamp hour battery, it's not fast. Again, it doesn't cost much from here to get some speedier charging on another POCO, but the charger is at least in the box with a bumper case and a pre-applied screen protector. Now, I have accessories and cables and chargers. It's still nice having a fully accessorized phone out of the box, especially when I imagine this kind of phone might be going to a number of students. Wrapping this video up, I still feel the POCO's greatest strength is also its primary weakness. I've played with 3 phones now called M4 in varying configurations of Pro and 5G, starting back November of last year. Now, if you're a savvy shopper, it's nice knowing you can always get the best tech POCO has to offer, shopping what's been most recently released. That would be great in a vacuum. I think there is a concern though, because we know phones stick around in inventory on shelves longer than the window POCO is releasing them. It's not a foregone conclusion as we transition from LTE to 5G in the main markets for this phone, that the 5G versions will always be the better phones for someone's needs. You might be able to trade better screen, charger, or camera tech for a slightly older 4G phone and arrive at similar, if not better, prices. POCO just releases so many phones. It's tricky for a reviewer to always remember what parts and pieces are in each model. I can't imagine consumers are able to easily pace this brand, but that's an issue of marketing. And when it comes to this phone right here, right now, I think it's a solid balance. Power and performance, low costs, and a lifestyle focus. Even facing some solid competition, the M series continues to impress. So I will, of course, leave some links down below where you can find more information on this new POCO M4 5G, where you might be able to shop these bad boys online. As always, thanks so much for watching, for sharing these videos, and subscribing to the channel. All the support lately has been fantastic. Those of you checking out the links below, if you're hitting my home site, SomeGadgetGuy.com, maybe shopping a little merch, or if you're joining the list of names scrolling by on your screen, from my Patreon, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list is basically the coolest collection of tech pals in the universe, so I hope you'll check them out. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters and the Twitch. I've revived my Flickr, and not so much on the Instagrams or the Facebooks, and I will catch you all on the next video.